There we go. That was the first sound effect.
Yeah. For some, I got to work it out. For some reason, I don't hear it on my end. But here we go. All right, everybody, welcome to the live stream. I'm still trying to work out what a name would be for this, so I can only imagine what we're going to come up with eventually. But today, we're going to talk a little bit of ballistics. Um, so there has been an aspect to this. Oh, great. Rumble dropped again. Uh, I don't even know. Anyway, we'll just keep moving. We'll do it straight on YouTube. I don't know what's going on with this thing. Either way, we're going to talk ballistics. Um, there has been very, very strange occurrences where people think that it's a one size fits all. So I don't. I know that that's not the case. Um, but apparently everyone thinks a 30-06 is a 30-06 is a 30-06 is a 30-06. Well, the problem with that is that's not true. Um, there's different there's different loads, there's different grains, there's different all kinds of things, and when there's claims made that the bullet should have done X, Y, or Z once it hit the neck. Um, I've been waiting a long time. I really wasn't even sure if I should do something like this, but I've been waiting a long time to see if anybody else talked about it. There's a lot of firearms guys that would um, say a lot, like what they expected a 30-06 to do. And as I'm listening to some of this, and mind you, I have no idea what actually happened. I don't know for sure. I'm not making any claims. I'm not saying who's responsible. I'm not saying what happened. I'm telling you that the ballistics of what people think should have happened and what happens is it's not a one size fit all. There were some claims that the the ammo was uh, surplus, and if that's the case, it would add a new factor to the situation. I know they were saying that there was engravings on it, and then they said that those engravings weren't engravings, but it was the case stamp on the bottom of the bullet, which was supposedly some surplus. Now, this is just all hearsay. What I'm trying to bring up about this is that that can all be a factor. So I don't know if I'm explaining this. I'm trying to do. I need a producer, is what I need. But what I'm trying to do is do all this at once because Rumble, for some reason, keeps crashing out every time I think I get it. But I brought my guest Drew in because he was in the firearms field for a very long time, and I thought it would be important. He, I mean, I believe he agrees with most of what I'm saying. So I wanted to let him give his aspect and his thoughts on how it's not a one size fit all. So, Drew, why don't you go through what you think is relevant? I'm sure you understand what I was trying to say. I'm doing two things at once here. So go ahead.
Absolutely. First, I would like to say yesterday was Charlie Kirk's birthday, October 14th, and it's also the day that President Trump issued him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which his wife Erica accepted. So before we get into the science and we get into the specifics of that, I just wanted to acknowledge that. And his loss devastated me, and I have a great respect for him. And just wanted to put that out there before we kind of use this case as a sort of ballistic autopsy in the discussion. So now moving forward to that, my background is I'm a certified gunsmith since 2002. Glock armor. I worked in the firearms industry as a professional at a firearms manufacturing company. I'm not going to get into a bunch of details about which company and all that. But I was very involved with the manufacturing, testing, designing of firearms for some time back in the early 2000s as well. I have over 36, 37 years of firearms experience. Just to give a little validity as to what my opinion is based more so on fact of science of things that I've seen doing personal ballistic tests and just from all the various calibers and different firearms and barrel lengths and loads and all that kind of stuff. So what I will say is from the things I've heard now, where I'm only going to base what I'm going to say on the information we have available in terms of this specific incident, but everything you said is correct. Firearms and ammunition ballistics are designed to do a certain thing, and they don't always do that. Now, a simple example I can give to kind of dumb it down for people who don't know is jacketed hollow point, old technology. It expands. Everybody kind of knows that, and you think somebody gets hit with it, it's going to do this great amount of damage. And what we have seen in many times, all it takes is something as simple as, the person who was hit with a round was wearing a certain type of material jacket,
Yep.
and that ballistic hollow point performed like a full metal jacket will. That's where the newer technology, and I believe Hornady was one of the first companies where they have these new like rubber polymer tips that fill up the capsule of a hollow point to prevent materials, whether that be hard stuff, wood, sheetrock, shooting through hard obstacles, or clothing, cotton, leather, denim, filling up the cavity and the round not performing or expanding as expected.
Let me give a
Um,
caveat real quick.
yeah,
I wanted to make this clear. You tell me if you've ever heard of this, because I know I have heard of it a couple of different times, and it actually made sense to why we see it. But uh, full metal jacket is what's typically issued in infantry and a lot of divisions throughout the armed forces in the military. And this might be FUD lore, but it makes sense. I don't know for sure, but I was told the reason for that is because what the ballistics would do if it was anything but a full metal jacket. Like as lethal as a 5.56 full metal jacket could be, it could be more lethal if it was a hollow point or something with a ballistics tip. So they tried to, and I've heard the term, it could be considered a war crime if you did have guys deployed, because the idea is to get the enemy off the battlefield, not to necessarily kill, although that's the ultimate, like what they would do. So as a measure, they even prior to war, they would say everyone gets issued a full metal jacket because what they're hoping for is a through and through. I mean, obviously they're trying to take you out of the fight. That's the ultimate goal. If you die from that, then it is what it is. But the reason for everybody being issued a full metal jacket was supposedly so that you could get a through and through, and that somebody's life could possibly be saved after the fact. Now whether or not that's actually a true aspect, like as far as like what they say they use it for, that happens. If you get like this is there's so much gray area, and I know you know this, that if you were going to be shot by something, a full and you were hoping to survive, a full metal jacket, which just means it's a it's a copper washed projectile. It's lead with copper on the top, and it's meant to pass through. So that being said, that's primarily what I'm told about what it is that they use full metal jackets for. I wanted to say that just because that adds to the aspect that, like, you don't know what round was actually used by whoever shot whoever.
yeah. So what I will say about that is, I believe that is the guise which the armed forces, and I think this happened under the Geneva Convention after World War II. They also outlawed flamethrowers in certain aspects in terms of, I guess, burning people alive was inhumane, which they did to in the battlefields of World War II. If you watch any war documentary, you'll see a lot of that. So they did change some rules in terms of military engagements, especially on foreign soil. Um, I personally think it was more of a how do we save money? Because if
Yeah.
every round fired on a
Yeah.
battlefield was a high performance jacketed hollow point or some sort of specialized defensive round, and most rounds miss in combat. Every 10 rounds fired, one maybe will hit in most battle engagements. Because there's another caveat to that, which contradicts that. And I will say, and I think I could say this for all law enforcement divisions, but I've spoken to many NYPD officers. Most law enforcement officers are required to carry jacketed hollow points and are prohibited from carrying full metal jackets. Now, the reasoning is because in an urban, civilized environment, a full metal jacket will overpenetrate, can go into a neighbor's house. It could go where you don't want it. And a jacketed hollow point, by design, if it works the way it's designed, will stop in the target and won't overpenetrate and put other, you know, whatever's behind the target in jeopardy.
You
Which
want it
again,
to stop in the body, in the body of the person that you're trying to shoot, because if it passes through, it could hit somebody else or something else.
correct. Which I know for a very long time, FBI, CIA, civilian law enforcement back in the 90s would carry federal hydroshock. It was their issued round. And I fired, I don't know, probably at least 1,000 rounds in my day, which that's pretty much outdated technology. The theory of that round, and I use that as an example because that was the predecessor to like how the military used to carry back in the day 1911s. Then they went to the Beretta M9, then they went to the SIG, and now supposedly moving forward they're going to be with Glock. So using that round, and that round, the hollow point cavity had, which was a piece of lead. It was like a thimble. If this is the hollow point cavity, there was like a pin casted in the inner lead core that was supposed to help prevent the cavity from getting full and all that kind of stuff. So it would expand properly in a soft target and not hit maybe an innocent bystander if there was an engagement in a public area. So, does that logic apply to the military on foreign battlefields? No. But I will say I think it was more so of a how many millions of rounds or tens of millions of rounds are fired per battle over the last 100 years, and they figure just for cost. I think that's more of what it was, but that's not like a politically correct motivation for a major military organization to claim. But then that's just my opinion. Maybe there's more to it than that. But yeah, I do agree that there was this thing where we're in a battle. You're fighting to survive and stop the enemy combatant. Your goal is not to purely kill them; it's to disable them, neutralize the threat if they happen to sustain serious injury and pass. That's just how war goes. But who really knows? Because there's so many lethal. You want to talk about them not issuing hollow point ammunition, but they'll drop a JDAM or some type of massive missile
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
incinerate. It's kind of like,
Well,
you know,
before we get off into the weeds, as another caveat, they also said the same thing about using shotguns in the trenches. That when World War I, World War II, when the Americans were issued pump action shotguns,
trench guns. Yeah,
yeah, they hated that. Like they were there was a big it was a big deal because they considered it like cheating, I guess is I don't know for lack of better words. They because of what it can do, especially at close ranges, and you imagine in the trenches. So
yeah,
what I'm trying to say is that ballistics works in funny ways, and it's not a one size fit all. And I think we can agree on that. Is that like you can what you're shooting, how far away you're shooting it, the ambient temperature can play a role. Um, like you said, the clothes before. I know I've heard before that even wearing like a heavy jean jacket can really slow down ballistics of a pistol round.
oh
So
yeah,
that's what I'm trying to get at with some of this. I hear it and like I see comments and I hear people make claims about what it should have done. And if it was that, then it should have done this. And that's
yeah,
what I'm trying to really dispel with this particular episode is that it doesn't work like that. And you don't have to be an expert to know that. Because I grew up hunting and almost everybody either had a 30-30 or a 30-06. Like I can just remember plainly that was like the two biggest rounds. And time after time after time, they would shoot a deer in the vitals. And when I say vitals, you know what that means. Like, it's somewhere in the heart, lungs area. And them deer keep going. Now,
Yep.
that doesn't mean that they're not going to die. It just means the expectation that the bullet was supposed to do something that it didn't. And for whatever reason, it didn't do it. It just didn't. So when it's complex, but it isn't. So we could get into the nuance. You say whatever you want about it. It doesn't matter. I think some specifics is important to show examples, but it's definitely not a one size fit all. And just for one more example is they'll even, you can get loads that are packaged that a rifle may like, right? And rifles vary. The same rifle comes off the same assembly line, number one, number two, and both of them barrels like different loads. And then you get into the ammo aspect of it, and they have lot numbers on them. Those lot numbers, when they change, they weren't all made at the same time. Those exact same type of ammo, the exact same load, they come out of that box, they can shoot differently. I
Yep.
mean, anybody that does a lot of shooting can tell you that. So I'm trying to give example after example after example that I know of that would lend credence to the idea that just because you've seen a 3006 do something one time doesn't mean that it's going to continue to do that time after time after time. What's the cat's name?
This is Nova. This is my boy cat. He's a half part Maine Coon.
Oh,
He's a
Maine
big
Coon.
boy, and yeah, he's meowing for some attention because I haven't given him any attention since I got home. But now
All right.
he's done with me. He's camera shy.
All right, I wanted to try to squeeze that in because I want you to go and give your side of this. I just wanted to try and squeeze that in. I think it's important for the context, especially in the first few minutes as people begin to file in that, so go ahead.
Well, I could think of several instances, and this was many years ago, well over a decade ago. I did a ballistics test with trying to think of what rounds, what calibers they were. Let me put it to you like this: you would expect a round. So if we're going to talk about 3006 in this instant, and I'll just use an example. Certain loads is even in 3006, which is a big large game caliber, you can buy varmint loads, prairie dogs, hogs, things like that, that are faster and lighter, have a greater velocity, but have a weaker kinetic energy in terms of the impact and when it hits the target, the type of kinetic force it uses. I did a test once, and this was speaking to what you said about different lots of ammo. I believe it might have been a 308 Winchester. And it was the same brand. The boxes were packaged differently. One looked like an older surplus. It probably was 8 to 10 years older. And we fired them through one of those chronographs to catch the speed and the FPS. It was through a 22-inch barrel. And the older round had probably between 2 and 300 FPS greater than the newer production round. Now, I don't know if that was, again, just because it was a different lot. They were manufactured at different manufacturing companies. Some, Winchester, Federal, they don't have just one plant. They have a plant in one state, and they have a plant in another state. If the ammunition was stored correctly or wasn't stored correctly. But I got a faster result from what I thought was going to be the weaker round because it was just sitting so long, and maybe some of the powder had gotten wet over time. You don't know what to expect. So in me expecting that the newer production round was going to perform better or at least equal, and I got less FPS. And this isn't just a one for one shot. This was like 5 shots out of each box, the new box and the old box. In regards to what I've seen ballistically, I've seen hollow points, Winchester PDX rounds, Remington Golden Saber, Federal, all kinds of different Federal defensive rounds where I've shot into material, ballistic gel, wet newspaper, putting an old pair of denim jeans in front of it where the ass pocket portion, so it's like a double layer where the pocket and then the cloth that connects to your skin. And what was a high performing well expanding projectile in a more clean test failed in another test and acted as a full metal jacket. And I repeated these tests just to see if it was like a one time fling, because now in reference to this assassination of Charlie, it wasn't a clean eye level shot. Supposedly the shot came from up high. So no, that's an angle to consider. The way of the angle strikes the target also plays into account of how it's going to react. I've seen, if you're talking about getting hit with a 5.56 or a 2.23 Nosler, high grade, 69 grain jacketed hollow point that you would go hunting with for medium game, or getting hit with a full metal jacket from, say, a 5.45, which those bullets are called the poison bullet. They tumble ass over end like a saw blade ripping through you,
Mm-hmm.
which has done a lot more tissue damage than a high grade hollow point in certain instances. So, depending on the caliber, the barrel length, the velocity you're getting, all of these things can play a role. In regarding to Charlie's situation, in what we've seen on the news, and unfortunately, I did see the video, the uncut video, the day of, prior to them even announcing that he had passed. It was still kind of a questionable. He was shot. They took him away. We don't know where it's going to land. After I saw the video from the right angle, I knew in my gut the thump of it hitting his upper chest area here, the thud
Mm-hmm.
of it contacting him. You could hear that. And if you've ever heard rounds go down range, when you're shooting a gun and you're standing next to somebody who's shooting a gun, it makes a loud bang. You don't often hear the impact of it hitting a target. But if you're standing closer to the target and further away from where the round is being fired from, so you don't have that sonic boom of the crack of the shot in your ear, and you hear that slug impact, say, a pile of dirt or a soft target, an animal, it's something you'll remember for the rest of your life as a definitive sound. So when I heard the sound and I saw the amount of blood and how quickly he bled out, near instantaneous, in the way he locked up, it was clear. I knew in my mind. I said, okay, that was a high velocity rifle round. It wasn't a 5.56. It could have been a 7.62. It could have been something like that. So when I heard it was a 30.06, supposedly, I wasn't at all surprised. If we're going to also go under the guise that it was military surplus, something closer to the generation of the rifle that they claim was used, which
Mm-hmm.
was a Mauser M98, I believe,
Which is
which is,
interesting all by itself too. I mean, what?
yeah. So and again, I did research after the fact just to brush up on these older generations of firearms. I used to be very into World War II firearms. The Mauser was actually the Gerwer 98. It's a German word. I can't pronounce it. That was like the predecessor to what was known after the fact as the Mauser, which they discontinued the original in like 1936 or 45, and then they reissued them as the Mauser M98. I think 2007 or 2009, somewhere in there. So I'm going to assume that this is one of the reissues that they made in probably the early to mid 2000s. Could it be a vintage from 1940s, and maybe there was a couple that from the early 50s, which to my knowledge was discontinued? It's possible. At the end of the day, there were 24-inch barrel rifles, 24-inch barrel rifles at 200 yards, which I read that the specific number of yardage was closer to like 140 something yards.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Well, about a
Uh,
buck 50 or so.
about a buck 50, but we'll just say 200 yards just to keep it even and clean, from a 24-inch 30.06 with an optic that's sighted in to keep 3 to 4 inch groups, with, again, we'll say surplus ammunition, which I believe was like M2 ball ammunition from like what the Browning BARs and the M1 Garans would fire during that era. Those rounds are actually coming out, I think, about 400 to 500 feet less FPS less than modern 308 hunting rounds. And I believe the M2 ball was like 150 grains, where now you could get 170, 180, 100, 165, 180, and 190 grains that are pushing, over, 2,500 FPS velocity, and the muzzle energy is about the same, about 2,500 foot-pounds of kinetic energy at 200 yards with a zero decrease in trajectory, which means there was no bullet drop, which again, from an elevated height, shooting down to the tent where Charlie was at 200 yards, unless there was extreme winds, talking like hurricane weather winds that would alter that round and within 200 yards, it wasn't a shot that you needed any kind of special training. Any teenager whose father takes them out hunting and they go to the range occasionally to do some 100 to 300 yard shots, it's not going to be that difficult. Charlie was sitting in the same position. The shooter had all the time in the world, essentially. And if we're talking about an M2 ball full metal jacket, at that distance with that weight, 150 grains, I do not see it tumbling. I don't see it. I see it being a straight through and through. And it's going to be a very small entrance wound, and the exit wounds can be significant, the size of
Hold
an
on. Look,
acorn.
this he's got a BAR.
Nice.
Hold up. Wow. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot I could say on that, but damn. Nice.
Yeah, if it wasn't for how heavy that thing weighs, shooting them in full auto would have been it just would have been very unfeasible during World War II. But if you had to
Well, wait,
carry one
here.
during,
So
during
before I want to squeeze this in real quick. So that the let's start with this. My impression is that so far what they claimed is very probable. So, I mean, that's not to say that I trust the government or the federal government or anybody to say that they're not. I mean, they basically lie about everything. But for what we're looking at for like ballistics, that situation and the end result is very probable. Um, I assume that this kid had very minimal training, but knew how to shoot that gun. Um, and he was probably aiming for somewhere near the head. And with the angle that he was on, it just ended up dropping low on the neck. And again,
or
like you said, the
yeah,
the the kid being, if you're a hunter, that's not a prone position with all the time in the world. And I would assume that even the ammo in the ballistics, a hit on the neck is almost guaranteed to go straight through. I mean, that's not going to catch a lot there, unless you're some big muscle bound and it's hitting a ton for it to do what it was supposed to do. So
if it
what I'm
hits the
trying to say,
collarbone or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that so far in this story of what they presented as what happened, I see it as very probable. It does not mean that I believe them in any way. There's also a lot of stuff that was said outside of what was done there, like trying to say that he took the gun down and all that other stuff like that. That makes no sense to me. But the the end result of prone position, knowing the gun, it's not that far, and then what we've seen in a video all seems very likely. I mean, would you agree?
I would definitely agree, and I think I remember somebody commenting that, like you said, like why would somebody aim for the neck when that's probably the hardest and most narrowest point above the shoulder? And I look at it like this: the average people who have their rifles and they go and they zero their rifle, they go out to the range, they put a new scope, new optic, and they're going to zero it.
They're going
It's gonna
flat.
it's going to take you, it's going to take you several rounds, unless you just get lucky and it happens to be very close. You're going to need, your windage elevation, a couple of clicks here and there. So I'm going to say most hunters, their rifles, their scopes are zeroed from a barrel that was relatively warm. Now, when you shoot a cold bore shot, that can, throw, now your zero is not going to be what it was when you were 10, 12, 15, 20, 30 rounds into zeroing your gun at the range. So maybe he was aiming for the head and it was low and a little to the right because, again, a cold bore shot. His zero was not perfect because of those reasons, or
So
maybe he was just
look,
nervous.
just for everybody else, you have to take into consideration most people that would be watching this are not going to know what a cold bore shot is. So try to explain that real quickly.
Okay, so a cold bore shot, no matter what barrel you have, no matter how high quality it is, cold hammer forged, the most expensive modern barrel, when they heat up, ballistically, their point of aim is going to change. Very minimal, but out to distance past, say, 2, 3, 400 yards. If you got your barrel very hot at the range, you shot, 20 rounds. And, by the 15th, 20th round, you got, okay, now I'm spot on. I'm getting 1 inch groups. I'm right where I want to be. Now the barrel's nice and warm. You go out the next day, or let an hour, 2 hours go by and you let that barrel cool and get to room temperature. If it's cold outside and it gets actually cold and you fire the same ammunition and same target, same line of sight, same everything, and you take that first shot, you most likely will see some variation in your point of impact. It
Right,
may be an inch low and a half inch to the right, and then not that you want to shift your aim, but now as you continuously shoot and the barrel gets warm, you may see your point of impact shift to where you zeroed it with a nice and warmed up barrel.
right. And
So
so, meaning to simplify,
yeah,
you can start here on a cold bore, and as time goes on, it can get your MOA can increase.
it
So,
can shift. The point of impact can shift so slightly, which out to distance can mean inches.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Like the further, an eighth of an inch at a foot translates to a lot more at hundreds of yards later. Um,
absolutely.
I'm trying to just keep in mind that most people won't know some of the terminology. So when it seems like I'm just trying to get you to explain. So
Yeah, absolutely.
when to kind of put a bow on the the beginning of what we're explaining here, very probable. I think that the discrepancies lie in how they claimed the rifle got there and how it got away. Uh, the other part is that no one has made any claims as to what round they found because they may not have found it. Like so, they found a rifle, um, and this is where stuff gets into the gray area, right? Like somebody got shot, they kind of know where it was at. They know where basically the shot came from. They have somebody, which this is another aspect to it that I find fascinating. So you planned on assassinating somebody, but then you went and wrote a detailed text message to somebody to explain exactly what you did and say that you did it. That is that's next level, either stupid or perfect for somebody that's investigating you. So this is where I have a lot of problems with the official story is that I don't there's no investigator that could ask for anything better. That like somebody just said it, right? That's not to say that he did or didn't do it. I'm just saying this is weird, right? Like that's weird. So the shot, him being able to make the shot, what happens with ballistically whenever Kirk gets hit with the shot, all that is probable. And that's not to say that anything else didn't happen or that there wasn't somebody else. There's a lot of claims being made, but what I typically see is that people are saying that this shot and the way that it hit shouldn't have happened that way. And I'm trying to tell you that, or not just you, Drew, but anybody listening, that it is very probable for that exact thing to happen that they claim happened. That doesn't mean that I'm saying believe the feds and what they're saying. I'm saying that the end result is highly likely. So, the rest of it is, I would love, we'll never know. Nobody would ever know what exactly happened. I don't think there's been a single person that I've followed, seen, that made a video about any of this that walked into this area where they start to say what is actually true about it's possible. There's people saying that there was a second shooter. It's like JFK stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I don't think that actually happened. I think something happened. the whole story doesn't make sense. But as far as the shooting and the result of the shooting, I don't think that that part's necessarily a lie. But there's no way that he took that rifle apart at any point.
No, and again, just to backtrack, me seeing when I saw the video, him getting hit, the moment of impact, even with all the bleeding, which could happen even with a pistol round if you get hit in an artery or a vein in the neck, but the thump in which I heard the shot contact him, to me, led me to believe it was at the very least, a high velocity rifle round. We did not see the exit wound, so that's really the people who are talking about, oh, it should have did this, it should have did that. Soft flesh on the entry is not going to look like anything special.
Mm-hmm.
The exit wound on soft flesh will tell a way greater tale. Fast forwarding to the story, the official story of it, which I followed very closely since the day it happened. I repeatedly watched the video of this assailant, suspected, person of interest, climbing down off a roof, jumping, a distance of 12, 15 feet off of a roof with nothing but a backpack.
Yeah.
Now, again, let's just say some miracle he defied the laws of physics and gravity and was able to, beyond field strip and essentially disassemble this particular type of weapon, which requires tools and
Right.
requires, some sort of like, okay, there's set screws. This is like going to take some time. It's not popping a
And
clip.
just as another caveat, not just that, but like if you're going to break down that rifle, you would have and put it back together and shoot, or vice versa, whatever the case is. You'd have to confirm zero, because you'd be really lucky if you put it back together
And it
and it
wasn't
had,
2 feet off.
yeah, like I mean, because I cannot picture the situation where you take it apart to get it up there and then put it back together on the roof and use it, and it's still having. I mean, it would be kind of miraculous, like for real, like for it to not affect it.
And for people who only are really maybe more familiar with modern firearms, where you have a red dot or an ACOG or an aim point or some type of quick detach optic you take on and off your 1913 Picatinny style rail and you maintain zero. When you're talking about disassembling a rifle like this, the front of the stock, the glass bedding or whatever, how they bed the barrel into the front of the stock in like an old style hunting rifle, for you to really disassemble that and then, somewhat of a rush, put it back together and just tighten some screws down and throw the optic on at 200 yards, your point of aim can be off so dramatically, as you said. To have any confidence in the shot, anybody who's competent at firearms whatsoever, that would be a big risk without confirming, that the zero held. And again, we're talking about a rifle where they only made 24-inch barrels or 23.7 whatever, 23-inch and change barrels. So if you just had the bare stripped barrel, that's 2 feet of barrel. Where did he hide that in the video that I saw of him jumping down off the roof with a backpack that was moving kind of fluid? It didn't look like there was like something in his backpack that was keeping it, to like, shape of a form of anything.
Mhm.
He could have had a pistol in the backpack. Nobody would have ever known.
Right.
But, so, assuming that, and then it was found in the woods, how did he get it off the roof? Even if we're going to go that extra mile and
And
say
it
he
was
defied.
assembled when they found it. They took a picture of it assembled, which it would imply that not only if it was some, if you're just using logic and you happen to get it up there in one piece and then you use it, and then there's video of you running with it, but you don't actually see a 20. If you, again, I'm trying to assume that most people don't know how long a 24-inch barrel is, along with the stock and everything. It's not easy to conceal.
No. And
But if you
this,
were to, if
yeah,
you were to break it down in this rush after you just, shot somebody from a sniper position on a roof, right?
yeah.
And there's cops everywhere in chaos. You then stop to take it apart so that no one sees it, I would assume. And then you get down in some fashion, however they said he got down, and then reassemble it to put it in the woods, because they found it reassembled. It was assembled. The picture was of the gun laying on the ground, assembled. None of that makes sense. And because of that, it's leading to people making a ton of assumptions that just, especially when it comes to the bullet, like everything just goes sideways. That's all to say. There's holes in this story.
Yeah,
I
there's big
don't
holes.
think the hole in the story was exactly that he was shot with something from close range and somebody helped the guy do it. I don't think that that's actually what happened.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the more the news you hear on TV, the average person is not even going to think to ask these questions. But I'm looking at it as in even without the barrel. You talk okay, so I think the overall length from muzzle to buttstock is around 44 to 46 inches. The front handguard that goes under the barrel after it passes the action in the breech section of the bolt area, the barrel I think only overhung. I mean, I don't know, somewhere between 8 to 10 inches, and then you have the under barrel to the stock, which was one solid piece, wood, polymer, whatever it's made out of. That in itself is now close to 2 feet, if not more. So you're
Yeah,
broken down. You're talking about 2 foot, maybe even longer, 2.5 foot of the empty stock with just the
yeah.
action. And that's the type of rifle. Even to take the barrel out, once you disassemble that action, you pull the trigger group with the trigger guard, and you pull that out of the stock, assuming he got that far, which depending on an old version, for you to get that barrel bedded and pulled back out of the action of the receiver, that these parts on these older guns don't necessarily just fit together. You may need a rubber mallet to seat it properly. It may need to be wiggled, or there's powder buildup. It's stuck. It doesn't want to come out. So
So
it's
it's
like there's just so many
extremely,
holes
yeah, right. It's
in
extremely
disassembling it,
unlikely.
reassembling it.
It's extremely unlikely. And I'm glad you're explaining it in detail for the people that would understand it, because that just it goes to verify that at least they could say what you're talking about. I'm going to give the dumbed down version as I interject to try to, because most people have no idea what it's extremely unlikely that any of that transpired. Like, I mean, next to almost impossible. I would be thoroughly shocked if somebody could show a video and prove me wrong. I would bet the house that none of that happened. So what did happen is going to be left to guessing. Um, but man, I'll tell you, this one is it it hits a nerve, first of all, because it leaves people can see the holes in the story. That some of it's obvious to people that know what they're talking about. Some people just use logic and it's obvious. But when there's holes in this type of story, um, it could probably be figured out if people had the right information to start with. So like people are starting at the shooting and not understanding ballistics, not understanding the rifle, not understanding how any of this works, not understanding it's a 4 foot 2x4 that you're trying to hide, right? You know what I mean? So like if you can try to picture that as a 4 foot piece of a 2x4, let's just say that that's what you're now imagine yourself trying to hide that on the way up and the way down, right? That's not going to be easy. Somebody's going to see that. Um, but again, I keep drumming this point because this is the thing that drives me crazy is that the people claiming that it should have been a nuclear bomb that hit him, his head should have been gone. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's a big
Yeah,
round moving very quickly, and it was whether the shot was well placed or not. The neck isn't going to cause it's not going to cause the bullet to do what it might have been designed to do because there's not enough meat there for it to do it. And you just have to imagine it's almost like a through and through. Now it's going to cause all that damage, right, as it passes through, but it's not going to be like, right, because
yeah,
that's what I picture people think. They say 30-06, it's a high power round. It is, but it does not do what you think that it's going to do every single time because you've seen it do a thing once.
yeah. No, absolutely. And again, unlike cartoons or Hollywood movies, and I'm sure there have been people who maybe served in the military or law enforcement where someone got hit with a round. Listen, if the round would have been an inch closer to the edge of the neck, where it wasn't, encompassed in the mass, so it was closer to the edge, you might have saw a blowout in the skin
Yeah,
that looked like,
yeah.
Jason Voorhees took a machete and chopped him 3 times in the neck. And again, assuming the type of round is important when we're
Yes.
talking about muzzle velocity, because again, so I've seen soft points do far more damage, the wound
Yeah.
cavity, than a
Yeah.
jacketed hollow point meant for hunting.
Yeah.
So again, the exit wound, which we have no, visual of, not that I would want to see that, but that would tell more of a tale. But again, still, even with like say a soft point, 125 grain soft point, or a ballistic tip on the heavier side for big game, 190 grains, moving at that speed, which is over 2,500 FPS and like close to 2,600 foot pounds of kinetic energy at that speed, hitting a soft target because there's pretty much no bone. Now,
Hmm.
maybe from the angle, because it was elevated, when we saw it strike him here, maybe it came out below his shoulder blades
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
angle, which again, without having a visual of that, now it's a wound on his back. It's not even his neck. We really, it's a guessing game in all aspects. But I wasn't shocked to see a small entrance hole with a shit ton of blood. The speed and the thump of force is what led me to believe it was this type of maybe a 30 caliber, something really big, moving really
Yeah.
fast, really heavy. Other than that, I didn't see anything like, oh well, why didn't his head fall over and his whole head fall off like a cartoon?
Well, I think
Again,
here's
just
the thing: is there's people that have a misconception, especially from watching too many movies, right? Like to give you an example of why people don't really understand how rounds work is that you'll see people hide behind trees while they're getting shot at, right? And the rounds hit the trees. Listen to me carefully. If you're getting shot at, do not hide behind a tree. It's going to go through the tree. It will. And when that round is moving as fast as it's going, it's going to pass right through the tree. Ask me how I know, right? Like, I mean, the tree will not save you. But these are the types of misconceptions that like people don't really get because they don't have context for it. That's why I thought maybe us talking about this was important because it's it's people believing something because they've seen it in a different aspect, right? And that's not the way that it actually goes.
yeah,
But
it's yeah. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say it's so unpredictable because I've had times, and again, I grew up as a kid, many years in Pennsylvania, shooting trees in the woods, setting up targets, doing fun stuff, and there's been times where I've shot at trees, and I'm not talking big, humongous body size trees. I'm talking maybe calves, like nice athletic calf size trees, or a little bit larger, where I shot with, let's just say, 62 grain, green tip 5.56, and it went right through the tree like it was nothing.
Yeah.
But then now I'm in a different forest, maybe in further into the woods with a tree that looks similar, but it was a tree that wasn't half dying. It's a different type of wood,
Yeah.
and now those green tips didn't penetrate where I went to look at the exit wounds, because again, even on a tree, the entrance wounds, little pin dot. You see, like, okay, sometimes you got to kind of search for the
Yeah.
hole.
You can almost barely see it.
It's then you go around the back and the bark is blown off,
Yeah.
and there's big strips missing from where the exit wound blew from the force of the exit. A big chunk, like, oh wow, looking at the back, you could see
Yeah.
from a distance, you could see all the holes in it.
And all that,
So
listen, real quick, all that to say before anybody wants to, I'm not saying it's a one size fit all either. You can definitely have a different, this is exactly my point. You can definitely have a different reaction to different things, right? Like, so like, if you're hitting a hardwood tree, it might act different than say a pine tree. It's different density. But
absolutely,
that's just to further show my point of what I'm trying to get at here is that it doesn't do the same thing all the time, regardless of what you've seen it do before.
can't predict it. It's very unpredictable. Rounds that you would assume would go straight through, and you would see old videos. I remember seeing old World War II videos. And it's horrible to think. And I'm not talking about it lightly. But this is just a fact of nature and the world we live in, and we're talking ballistically, where people were lined up, 10 people in a row, and shot at close range with either a handgun round or a rifle round, and the first 3 4 people on that line would drop,
Right.
and then that same gun, same caliber, in another group would go maybe only through two people. So when you expect the caliber to do one thing, if the angle of the muzzle is aimed a certain way and it hits just a bone a certain way, it can ricochet and go in a direction, even when it has the kinetic force to not let anything stop it. Like a reflective surface, I've heard, and you can do research, and I've never personally seen it, but when you shoot at water, they say, okay, don't shoot at a lake, don't shoot at still bodies of water. You can get ricochets, and you would
Right.
think, well, how could water make a round moving at this speed with this type of muzzle energy? How could water deflect it? And it's not about the water deflecting it, it's about the
The
angle of
angle.
contact.
Yeah.
So you get the right angle, and it will, like skipping a stone on a
Right.
lake. It
Right.
will skim, and that's the same thing. Human bodies are made up of mostly water and fluid, and hitting a bone or hitting a tissue at the right angle can make a bullet do something and over penetrate, not penetrate enough, expand too much, not expand enough, and it'll never be a direct science. And all the control tests that we see, ammunition manufacturers. And I spent hours on the phone, in my day with Winchester ammunition manufacturing, federal guys who worked in the ammunition department, talking about everything from storage to different low powder loads and the evolution of the same cartridges that existed for 40 years and what they did to kind of update it, even though on the outside it looks the same. And that is the one true thing: is in a controlled environment you get these results, which you do get in reality a lot of the time, but there's no set expectation in ballistic performance from any caliber. I've been disappointed with defensive rounds, handgun rounds that was 50, 60, $45 and up for a box of 50.
Hmm.
Law enforcement, surplus, because usually, generally, defensive rounds are only sold in boxes of 20 or 25. So I've even had, law enforcement surplus in the 50 round boxes that I paid a crap ton of money for and did ballistic tests. And I'm like, they're performing like Winchester white box FMJs. Like, what's going on with these tests? Why am I not getting the results? And these were tests that I was mimicking from speaking to ammunition manufacturers who designed the bullet. So, it's really like, it's just very odd. And maybe I just had a bad lot. Maybe if I got a newer lot or an older lot, the projectile would have performed differently. You
So
know,
that's my point in all of this is that we've given numerous examples of why it's to expect something to happen because you think it should is not the right way to approach this. Um, if there's any truth at all in the whole story, it might be that he took a 30-06 in the neck. Everything else, I don't know. But I mean, he took like that. That to me might be the, and I'm not even saying it's truth. I'm saying it might be the closest thing to the truth. And just because it didn't happen the way you thought it would happen doesn't mean it didn't happen. That's all I'm trying to say. And I'm actually thoroughly shocked that more people in this, that they're all gun guys, right? Like nobody has given this angle yet. Not a single one of them. I've never seen nobody make a video about this because it's getting out of hand. What people are insinuating is happening, right? Like I see a lot of. There was some guy in the audience that hit a timer and it blew up something in his neck, and like, listen, man. That first of all, like as you said earlier, today's his birthday, right?
yesterday, October 14th.
Okay. So, man, that's strange that, it was, first of all, how it all lined up. But I tell you, it's all relative. What happened to him, regardless of what you believe happened, was a goddamn tragedy. He was taken from his children, and that's a tragedy. He was taken from his wife, and that's a tragedy. And to just put a finer point on it, that dude was the only one at that scale that wanted to talk to the people that hated him.
Yeah,
When they shot that dude, because he got shot, like there's a lot of people, like they get way off in the weeds. Uh, when he got shot, it changed a lot. And I don't think we've actually seen what that means yet. Uh, there's, my belief is that there's a snowball effect happening right now, and that it emboldens some people, and I wouldn't be surprised if things of this nature continue. I mean, let's knock on wood, but uh, it was a serious event in the way that it meant something bigger than even him, because people are enraged about it, and then people are also celebrating it. And
Yeah.
when you have that
Sickening.
binary,
Sickening.
uh, it means that, the two polar opposites, as they clash, something bad is going to happen. So, with all that being said, just keep in mind this story also ties back to like what I try to do is that, you have to conceptualize what's happening and prepare for what is probable. And this idea that like this is an isolated incident and there's nothing else going to come of this, I don't think that that's correct at all. I would love to be wrong.
Yeah.
But keep your head on a swivel out there. And I don't. I'm gonna try to end on this because I've said it numerous times. The claim that he was shot in the neck and what happened that we've seen on film is highly probable. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Um, the one thing I think I'll just add before we leave, and we're not going to deep dive into this, but I think it's relevant because I've seen some politicians and some haters online bring up this fact because there's some irony. At the moment he was shot, he was about to answer a question about gun control. He was asked by the person who he was debating with how he felt about the statistics and the gun violence and all the killings and this, that, and the third. And I believe Charlie's last, because Charlie had rebutted with a question. He's like, "Are we counting gang violence and gang related murders, or are we not including that?" And then the round struck him. So I've seen some politicians and some weirdos online saying negative things like, "Oh, well, the irony now. I bet you he feels different," and all this other kind of stuff.
Scumbags.
Without getting to it, because this is a whole nother episode. Um, I came to find out that Charlie and I shared a analogy, and it's in regards to automobiles. So automobiles, drunk drivers, just people having accidents for whatever reason kill far more people. Then you get the occasional psycho who runs their car or their van or whatever they're driving up on a sidewalk and runs a bunch of people down for whatever crazy reason they have. Nobody ever talks about the vehicle. Blah, ban the vehicle, ban Ford, ban Toyota. We got to go after these companies who are making these cars because the reality of it is, with all the automotive deaths we see, let's just say every year there's a couple of hundred, a couple of thousand a year. There are hundreds of millions of more lawful, quote, reasonable everyday uses that normal people use automobile vehicles that far outweigh the negatives of the misuse, accidents, or whatever happens with automobiles. And Charlie and I felt the same way, where as horrible as shootings and these tragedies are when things like this happen and bad guys do bad things and ruin it for everybody else, he still felt the pros far outweighed the cons for, let's just say, the hundreds of crazy people who do shootings a year does not come close to outweighing the millions, if not tens of millions, of peaceable citizens who use firearms and practice of firearms for the right use. So I feel like since he was shot during that kind of questioning, that deserved at least that comment from what I've heard him say before, and people could go research the video. I think he said it more than once, and when I heard him say it, I'm like, that's the exact analogy I give when people only want to focus on the negative and the misuse, but negate all of the innocent lives civilians use firearms to save themselves every day. Those defensive shootings or deterrents, even just from having one, from a bad guy doing a bad thing, are completely dismissed because it seems like so much. Oh, well, there's dozens of shootings every year, hundreds of shootings. And I'm like, yeah, well, you're talking about now prohibiting or causing an issue for the millions, if not tens of millions of people who there will never be a bad incident other than them having to defend themselves. And it's kind of like you want the masses to sacrifice for the minority of incidences, And being that this happened to Charlie while he was speaking on that topic, I've heard a lot of negative people throw shade like, oh, well, how do you feel about it now? How do you feel about gun control now? And it's just such a stupid argument. And I could say for sure, had he, been here now to say it, his opinion would not change. He stood on his morals, and he was an advocate for the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms, and that these unfortunate tragedies should not mitigate or cause an issue in the grand scheme of the population of people like us who are peaceable people, sportsmen, hobbyists, to whatever capacity, who just want to defend ourselves. And so, anybody out there who saw the shooting and that was something on their mind, like, oh, well, this was what they were talking about, I just kind of wanted to throw my two cents into that arena without
Well,
going too much further
there's
into it.
another aspect that I thought of right away outside of that, but they shot him because they didn't like what he said, and he got shot in his basically his voice box on his neck. So I thought that was really kind of strange. Like whenever they what enraged these people was they didn't like what he was saying. Now I'm again I'm trying to live in reality and not go into schizo world. Um, I think that was inadvertent, but it also is kind of strange. You know what I mean? I think he was probably aiming for the head. I highly doubt he was aiming for the neck.
It
Uh,
could have been, but it was off centered. It wasn't centered in the neck. So, being that it was off to the right of the shooter's angle and towards Charlie's left side, that leads me to believe that maybe it just wasn't zeroed correctly, or his point of impact shifted, or maybe he was aiming for the throat and was just off center. Who knows?
my honest opinion, just from what I'm seeing, is in my head, knowing enough to even give an opinion, which some people don't, is that he had it zeroed for he thought he was closer to 200 yards, and he was aiming at the head. And there's a lot of different factors, but I think he was aiming for his head because that's the only thing that makes sense. I think he was aiming for his head because where else would you aim, right?
The optic could have been zeroed for 300 or 400 yards, and at 200 yards, it's going to be 2 inches, 3 inches below
Yeah,
the target,
yeah.
which also makes sense because I'm thinking the kind of scope is probably not a modern scope. There's probably
No,
no BDC in the reticle bullet drop compensator. It was probably just a
it's a
crosshair.
surplus gun, and it had an older scope on it. I guarantee it was one crosshair. That's it, and then that was all. And he
Yeah.
probably had it zeroed for something that it wasn't. Again, the claim that the dude was a sniper from the rip, I was like, holy, like what?
He was military trained, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
it had to be a sniper. It was an attempt by some military, and I'm like, dude, that's not. I don't. It's just so much. When you actually know some stuff about a subject, and you hear people that are conspiracy minded, because I'm kind of conspiracy minded. I can kind of see the bull crap whenever it's coming in and identify it. No, but like when you can see that what they're claiming is obviously not what could have happened, and they run with it, and that grows like that. People they parrot it, and then the next person puts their twist on it. Oh yeah, it wasn't that, it was this, and there was another guy, and there was also something on his chest that exploded, and I'm like, dude, I don't I don't know. What
yeah,
I'm going to say for probably the sixth time is that it's very likely that the gun that was used may have been the gun that was used. How it got from where it was down to it was, I have no way of knowing. There's no way that the dude took it apart. I'm not buying that for a second.
mm-mm.
Um, I think that he probably got lucky. I don't think he even knew what he was doing. I think he got lucky that it even hit him. Uh,
Yeah,
and that said, the end result of people making it sound like his head should have exploded for taking a 30-06 is also, in my opinion, extremely incorrect. I don't think that it's. I know I have to keep saying this because people will hear what they want to hear. It's very probable that a bullet of that size could pass through his neck and do exactly what it did. Very probable.
yeah,
The rest of it, I have problems with. I don't really know how any of the other stuff actually happened.
yeah. I'm hoping that as this trial, and I've even heard weird conspiracies because I watched the arraignment. which they played live on the news, and there was even people saying, "Man, this is AI. Like that's not even the real guy. They have some like fake person." And again, this is going down the rabbit hole. I don't have an opinion on that. With all the factors of him confessing to his family and his father being a retired police officer who was supposedly, a Republican, and they had like conflicting views in the last 2 or 3 years, and his father saw that there was some type of trouble with his recent ideologies, after he went away to college. These things are all probable, but yeah, I mean, just us going back to the scientific point of it. He broke down the gun. He got off the roof. He reassembled it in the woods before he left it and walked away from it. There's no weapon platform, even in AR. Like you're gonna debarrel that from the upper with no
And
vice,
just
no
for a
nothing.
second,
Like it's just
that comment is really what the part of the problem is. At the end of the day, Charlie Kirk died. The crazies on the left celebrated, and the normies on the left justified it. So that inherently is where the problem lies after the fact. So
yeah,
how we got to the end result is really, uh, it's really messed up how we got here. But the reaction from it is really terrifying. And that's why I was saying to keep your head on a swivel. Like these people have shown that they have no problem doing this and they get celebrated. So these people are not connected to reality and a lot of them don't have a lot to lose. Like they don't have like children or they're married. Like they don't have that connection that's like I can't do that because what I'm doing is bigger than me. And so like there's no way I could jump out the window on that. I'm just not. I can't risk it. I have to look after my kids. I care about my kids. um I don't know. I don't know. I can't stress it enough. And we're on YouTube, so I try not to say too much, but like it would be very wise to keep your head on a swivel and be ready for what might happen. I'm trying to say it kind of coded because like I
yeah.
don't
You
want
don't want to
it to
come
be like
off.
any claims.
Well,
Well,
like
here, look, we're running close to being out of time, but this is an interesting question. Why don't you think Trump really got shot in his ear?
interesting because I did have some opinions when I originally saw that.
Good question, Q.
My opinion on it. And again, this was a shooting supposedly with an AR, so we're going to assume 5.56 and 193, full metal jacket, 55 grain, or 223, some 52, something in that ballpark. The problems I have with that is how quickly the supposed shooter, his identity, his background was kind of
Uh,
not
yes,
focused on too much, and it was kind of moved. It was mentioned, but it was kind of moved past. And my problem is the amount of, I don't want to call it luck, but for a round moving at that speed,
yes.
and we're going to assume a 16-inch barrel, so
Well, just explain that real quick. So, we were talking about speed with the 30-06. The 5.56 is moving much faster than that. The
yeah,
kinetic energy on target, it's not caliber with 5.56 because it's only a 22. The kinetic speed when it hits target because of how fast it's moving, 3,300 feet per
yeah,
second
over
is
3,000
screaming.
FPS. Yeah,
It's screaming, and that's where the damage comes from when it hits the target, because it used to be the bigger the bullet the bigger the damage, but like this particular round is very effective because of how fast it's moving. Now if something moving that fast goes by your ear, um I think you're going to have bigger problems.
this is and this is where I had the problem, because even to graze at that speed, let's just say the bullet literally just skimmed the surface like a sheet of paper just gliding across your hand. At that speed with that kinetic force would take a chunk out of your, there would be a good mark. It would look like, something like an animal bit a little piece of your ear off just from that kinetic force.
Yes,
So if it
yes,
was more like a paper cut that bled, that healed, and there's just like a little type of paper cut, to me
yep.
that says the bullet didn't even contact the skin, and that's just wind burn from
So
how
look,
fast the round was. And I have a
guys.
problem with how close that was. It was kind of like,
Yeah, yeah.
I
Look here.
just
Look, bear with
that's
me here,
luck,
guys.
some freaking nature.
Drew, Drew is not. He's not in tuned yet. What most of us, I think, have an understanding of. So this, I say that because this is a good point. WWE idiocracy, right? Do you have any idea what he means by that?
Vaguely,
It's a
I don't want
show.
to. I don't want to assume the interpretation of what's meant by it.
So it's I think it's a pretty good, pretty accurate way of describing that what we see is a show. They're putting on a show. Um, and just as an example, Trump was in the WWE, right? He actually did go out there and wrestle, right? Like, you know what I mean? And he's been on television for a long time, right? Like, you know, like what did he do prior to this, right? Like he was a TV show guy. He
He's an
played.
entertainer. Yeah.
Now, if you and you know, again, we're gonna go a little schizo here. So if you had prior experience with the WWE, what do they do in the WWE when they fake an injury? They
They
take
go.
a
They
small razor blade and they cut, right? Right? So what happens whenever the bullet goes by? You know what I mean? I'm not saying that that's what happened. What I'm saying is that it's very funny that all of that actually lines up. Um, and then what is the coincidence that like what is he 80 something, right? A
yeah.
bullet whizzes by his ear in an open field. Somebody gets shot right beside him. And mind you, listen, I know a person personally that was right there in the front row that worked for the Trump campaign. I'm not saying it didn't happen at all. I'm saying all of these things are very strange, right? Uh, but with all that being said, he also he also was worried about his shoe, right? Like he told them, "Let me get my shoe." You almost got shot in the head like 2 seconds before that. Uh, and you were worried about your shoe, and then you stopped and you grandstanded as well, right? Like you did, he did something, I can't remember exactly what it was, pumped his fist and said fight or something. I don't remember if that's exactly what happened, but the point is that none of that is what I would expect in reality. It is what I would expect if you were watching a show.
Like it's more of a Hollywood result than a real world result. Yeah,
I
and
think, I think so.
every time I see when I see President Trump do a speech or something, if it's up close, I'm always trying to look at that right ear
Yeah, that's weird
just to
too,
see
right?
if I see anything.
Yeah,
Because that was I said if we're putting luck aside, the speed and coming that close to you, there's no way it would just heal like it was a cut, even though it bled, like you said, like how they do in the WWE, and they grab this and they hold their face and they're really cutting themselves a little bit. And that to me was like he's either the luckiest man in the
yeah.
last like 500 years.
Yeah. And brave as shit too to pop like this 80-year-old dude just almost got his head taken off, right? Literally with seconds to go, and he decided to grandstand. That is all very much sounds like somebody would have written it in a script. And I'm not claiming that it wasn't real because don't
Yeah,
let nobody take this out of context. I'm making
you
no
can't.
claim.
Yeah,
I'm saying that that is all very strange. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that there isn't real world consequences to this show. That doesn't mean people don't get killed, right? That's not what I'm trying to say. Like it doesn't mean that like people don't get whacked for not following the script, maybe, right? I mean, one of the coincidences about what happened with Charlie was that he was openly deciding to start advocating for against Israel, right? Um, when you start to factor these things in, it's like it's it starts to point to something that's possible, but you know, obviously, no one can make any claims. I find both of them very strange. I see holes in both of the stories. Doesn't mean that I'm right or that anybody else is right. What I'm saying is there if there was a show being written, that would be a good script.
yeah, and if you look at, and now again, this is all just hearsay, and I feel the same as you in the sense like as at face value, I accept what happened as to be what happened. Um, but knowing and having the background of what I have, there were some red flags in like how and why, and it was just very. Well, the timing of it and coming to the climax of the election,
Yeah,
and it was very like, okay, is this God's hand? Is this God's hand at work, or is there something else involved? We'll probably never know. But it's very interesting to think
funny.
about. I mean, I'm glad President Trump survived that, and that things went the way they went. And there was somebody at I think Mar-a-Lago in Florida, who they caught, who supposedly was setting up an AK or an AKM style rifle that was going to
Yeah,
try
that
to
was a
launch
weird
out
one
through the
too.
fence.
He had the freaking scope duct taped to it. How? What?
And he just got sentenced. He was found guilty apparently in court, and he's going to be spending a very, very long time.
Okay, listen. I wanted to make this an hour, but I feel like we need to go a little bit longer because I feel like we should get into the schizo part of the show. Uh so is it all orchestrated to what ends? Do they want a civil war? Do they want the center to move right and away from the woke crap?
I think there's forces that want both of those things, and those forces might not be the same force.
I think they want chaos. I think that they want chaos at whatever avenue they can get it. Uh, I think that that's what the goal actually is. I think it's always been about separating people to fight with each other um, for as long as we can remember. Because as long as there's factions fighting, there's not a united front. And
And
because
we need a federal government to intervene and help.
exactly, like they're going to want to be the heroes that swoop in and suspend your rights in order for them to control things. Um, I just I just use logic, right? Like, and I try to simplify with the logic. If you were orchestrating this, if this was orchestrated, right? There's one reasonable conclusion to orchestrating events like these, and that's because you want to remove, how do I put this? You want to be in total control while the other people fight it out. It's the simplest way. I'm really trying to censor and not say anything too crazy. And I'm hoping that people can pick up on what I'm saying because for whatever reason, Rumble sucks for me. On it's only again, this is trial by fire, guys. So I'm trying to make it work. It's only the second time I've tried. I have no idea why Rumble isn't working. I probably would have dumped YouTube for the schizo version. So I'm trying to keep it as censored as I can. Uh, I don't. I just assume that that's the case. I just assume from seeing everything that I'm seeing that as long they want people to be fighting with each other in order to gain total control. That's what I think, in some form, the ultimate goal actually is trying to be. I don't know who the actual players are. I'm sure that are people that they're just the pawns in the game, But ultimately, I believe it's about control.
I, I, it I feel like it's about control, but I also feel like there are forces at work. It's truly a battle of good and evil in the sense where like it's also a spiritual war.
Uh-huh.
Putting politics aside, this is not really about if you're left, right, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, whatever you want to say. But what we're seeing is that there are two different types of human beings. There are the ones who are more, and again, I'm not going to say who's who, but they're ones who are more grounded. Like I really love this spiritual awakening that I'm starting to see a lot. I told you, Jason, a couple of weeks ago, I've been in church for the first time in a long time. Um,
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Hold on. No,
so yeah,
I mean, honestly, that's fucking awesome. It is. And
yeah,
I think you're right. I think that it is. So there's people that are they're seeing it. They're not. Most people don't quite know what it is, but they're seeing it and they're awakening to it. And I'm glad you're one of the ones that's starting to see it.
yeah. Thank you. I've been, I grew up in a religious Roman Catholic family. I've got my communion, my confirmation, was baptized, all that stuff. But going through life, you see things, you experience things that make you say, like, how the can this be like? How could these forces, elemental forces of God and Jesus or whatever, Elohim, Allah, Buddha, whatever you believe in, how could there be this power in the universe, but stuff like this go on? And I kind of went down that rabbit hole, and for a lot of years, I was only showing up to a church to attend a funeral.
Yeah.
And then prior to Charlie being assassinated, I, had a couple instances. You were one person I spoke to, and there were two other friends of mine that I spoke to about these things in recent times of like coming to having an epiphany of an awakening. And what happened to Charlie and everything that I went back and watched to him that he did previously and everything I saw after the fact in the celebration of his life really gave me the drive and the will to want to, reconnect with my spirituality and get back into church. And I feel like just watching the people who've been mourning him and who maybe stand for a certain beliefs and a certain moral system and a certain, life code are really this type of people. And we all are, people of faith and people of, karma and, do good, do right, and, curb your ego. And the world, our life is bigger than ourselves and only things that we want, and things are happening, even the bad and negative things that are happening are some part of some divine will beyond our understanding. And then there are those who have no value and are morally lawless in the sense where, like, oh, this person was killed. Oh, good. Damn, I,
No,
piss on the
listen,
grave.
you can
It's just,
really, what you're saying is, in my opinion, like I get it. And I like to try to, especially in this context, simplify it. It's like you'll know them by their fruits, right? Just look at some of the people that are celebrating and what they're celebrating, right? You can see like the gnashing of teeth because they think they're going to lose their ability to kill babies in the womb. That's fucking evil, dude. Like that's evil incarnate. Like you can see that, right? And
yeah.
then when somebody's actually killed, you can see them cheer it. That's evil, man. Like I can see it. I don't need much more black and white than that, right? You're showing me who you are. So, I mean, while all the other nuances are important, it's just, especially when everyone's on their own journey, and it for me, what I'm seeing is like you're starting to walk a path that is more spiritual, more religious, trying to get close to God, and that is something that a lot of people will never see. um, I would just encourage you to keep doing what you know is right when it comes to that, because you'll see. Our private conversations from time to time, you'll see what I mean. Uh, and I'm always here, like for anybody, but like I'm always here whenever anyone needs to talk. I'm not no guru, but I mean, like I have some input. I've seen some stuff in my life that a lot of people don't get to live through. So that said, it's like I'm trying to boil it down to there is a true war, a spiritual war going on in this world. And it seems like it's starting to come to a head. It seems like there's something about to pop off.
We need this because I know there are, we can get into the conspiracies or is this stuff on purpose to have people civil war and all this other stuff. And, there's a real potential for that to be the behind the scenes reason. But it's we're in a time where people are revealing who they are, especially with all the people who have went and said crazy things online, got themselves fired, kicked out of their house, and then claiming, oh, free speech. Free speech doesn't mean you're free of consequences. Now there are politicians, there are people that over the course of history, people I've known personally that I didn't like, that I've known have done horrible things that if they died I wouldn't uh, shed a tear over. But to celebrate in the manner to the level that I've seen people celebrate Charlie is purely demonic. Like, okay, you can believe he was a racist, you could believe he was a fascist or whatever these untrue things are if you really dig in and really understand who he was. But even at that, for you to celebrate on the level with like, there's no roadblock, there's nothing holding you back from saying the worst things you can think of to say, means you're morally corrupt and bankrupt. And I'm just glad I'm on the right side, meaning correct side.
Yeah.
Um, And if this needs to come to a head, we need to see the people. I've had to unfriend people. I haven't had to. I've chosen to, where I've seen people make comments, people that I knew that I grew up with in the streets from a very young age that I had a good understanding of, and they make stupid comments like, "Oh yeah, is it weird that I care more about this stupid, fictional character on a TV show than I care about so and so's death?" Like,
Yeah.
just it's not like, if you didn't like him, fine. If you didn't like what he said, fine. But for you to go out of your way and express that in that way,
To celebrate it.
to celebrate it, or
Why would you
just
celebrate it?
you go out of your way to make it like, you just really, you're praising in few lesser words that this happened to this person. We're not the same type of being.
Right.
And I'm not going to be phony around you and pretend like we have the same morals. I'm a family man. I believe in, the family structure. I believe in, good versus evil. And I'm far from, not being a flawed human
Well,
being.
here's what I'd like to suggest. Uh, I told you there's a group in a chat that I'm not sure if you're ready for it yet, but if you get on Twitter, make a Twitter or an X account, and we'll add you to the chat, and you can start to see that um, there's a wide range of Christian following, that it's a lot of different types of people, but ultimately they're all really good people. But the jokes are pretty. Again, we're on YouTube. We're gonna have to ease you into it. But I
I'll
think
show up with thick skin. Don't worry about it.
you should.
I'll show up
Um,
with my 3A+ body armor skin level on. So
yeah. So I want to try and button this up because I got to get up early tomorrow. We're almost at an hour and a half, but make an X account. Make sure you send me the link for it, and you'll be able to see some of the people that show up in the chat in the group. I'd suggest just making like a username. Don't use your full name on there just because people are retarded.
yeah, I
And
won't.
why don't you do this? Finish it out. What do you think, and where can people find you for your services with the DJ stuff?
Okay, so it is studio mixing and mastering. I won't come and DJ your kid Sweet 16. That's not what it is. You can find me at Luminary, Luminary, Mixdown, Mixdow down, on Instagram, on IG. One word, Luminary Mixdown. That's where I could be reached for anything, for work, or for technical advice, or I'm a pretty friendly guy. I get random people from overseas, Germany, places in Europe, that see some of my videos, and just we get into like technical conversations about maybe how to help them. I could be reached there. Um, Other than that, you said, how do I feel about the ending topic, or what particularly?
How do you feel about the idea that it was a 30-06 shot from a rooftop at 150 yards and hit him in the neck?
I feel that it is very possible, and it is probable that or something very similar happened. My issue, more so, without examining the wound on the person that was struck, and without finding bullet fragments, and without being having all that information, my issue really lies with the aftermath. The video of somebody in the distance standing on a roof. Apparently he stood up, or somebody stood up. Then the video of him jumping down, having nothing but a backpack. The weapon wasn't left up on the roof. It was in a field off of campus. He wasn't seen leaving the campus. There's no additional footage I've seen after the fact to say maybe it was a coincidence, and the person they showed on the roof climbing down with a backpack was just somebody who liked to watch that sort of thing from a vantage point, and then there was somebody else on another roof. I feel like there's a lot of holes and inconsistencies on how the aftermath of it, how he ended up where he did, how he got away. There was, the whole issue with the weapon, the disassembling. These are big. These aren't little. Like, well,
So
maybe,
would you say that it's safe to say that what the end result was as far as him being hit is probable, but the rest of the story has a ton of holes?
I would say that. Yeah, I would
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that's probable.
And again, just to reiterate, the reason why I'm asking you that is because you've had a lot of experience in this. You had a career in that field, and that's why we decided to broach this topic, is because this isn't just basically two guys that don't know anything spouting nonsense. Um, I Drew knows more than I do about a lot of the ballistics ends of it, but I'm not a novice. I do know some stuff, and that's why I thought it would be a good idea because I hadn't heard anybody say this aspect to it at all.
Yeah,
I think it's important to just look at it factually. Uh, Very likely that what they claim happened as far as the shot, it's probable. It does not mean that it happened, but that can happen like that.
yeah. Have you ever heard of what's called proof loads? Have you ever heard that term?
Yeah,
Okay, well, that's a whole nother conversation that doesn't really apply to this, but just going back to ballistics and the type of things that I worked with and worked around in in building, being part of the designing of new materials for firearms. And proof loads isn't a type of ammunition you're going to walk into your local gun shop and get. It's going to be sold from the ammunition manufacturer to the firearms manufacturer, and it's a highly over pressurized
yeah.
round.
It's a hot load to make sure that the gun isn't going to explode if somebody like re if somebody makes their own rounds and they put too much powder in it to an extent, it shouldn't blow up.
Yeah, it's more so that for well, at least in the capacity we used it for, was to test new material. So, okay, we're going to move away from this steel alloy, and now like ARs, it's like 70 75 T6 aluminum receivers. How do we know those aluminum receivers can withstand that pressure of any commercial load, plus maybe hand loads that somebody may make too hot? And then there's always the fact where, before dummy rounds were a thing for training, back in the day, you would train, and even just for weapon testing functionality, you would use live rounds. Now, when you have a box of 50 rounds, let's just say 9 millimeter, you load 15 rounds into a magazine. You're checking the cycling, the feeding, the extraction, the ejecting. You cycle those same rounds and then pick them up off the ground, load them back into the magazine, and recycle them through the rounds. The round will get pushed further down into the casing. And then when you take a fresh round out of the box and put it next to it, you'll see that that bullet now is a little shorter. A lot of people don't even realize that what you're doing is, besides creating a potential feeding issue, you're creating extra pressure within the casing, which now I've done it times where I had, 45 ACP, where the round was pushed so far down into the casing, it wouldn't even cycle normally. I had to like manually chamber it. And this was like a torture test. And the explosive force, I felt the difference from the overpressurization. But this will be another conversation maybe for a future video when we tested new alloys, brass receivers, certain aluminum type receivers with large center fire calibers using proof loads. We couldn't even shoot them. We had to lock the firearm in a vise, load it, and then put like almost like a grill on top of a barbecue. We had to cover the receiver, leave a ballistics room with ballistic glass, and pull on a handle or hit a button for the electronic mechanism to pull the trigger, because this isn't even a normal commercial load. This could very well explode these materials, and you could get. And I've had um, a couple of firearms blow up in my face. Luckily, they were rimfire. It was 17 HMR and 22 Magnum. But I've had these rounds blow up in a receiver in my face while I was doing test firing. And even in those small calibers, it could be a little jarring. It was quite
So,
an experience.
so
So I don't know if
all of
we'll make
that,
this a 3 hour video, or we can
yeah,
talk
right.
about it in another
So
video.
all of that to say that, yes, he's the reason why I asked him to do this is because he has a lot of experience in that field. So that's why I thought it would be important to just reiterate this isn't just a couple of guys bullshitting about something that they don't necessarily know about. This is speaking from experience. it's speaking from some level of expertise. So take it for whatever it's worth. And if you disagree, put it in the comments and tell me why. I want to know why you think we're wrong. And don't tell me no crap about because there was a second shooter. Come on, come on,
Yeah.
you know. But I am interested to see if there's anybody that actually has a case, just in case. I mean, I'm always open. I'll never say that I'm 100% right. I'm not dogmatic about much of anything. So if you disagree, put it in the comments. And if it's something, reasonable, I'll definitely consider it. Here's the thing. This is only the second shot at this, and I am not a techie. I'm learning on the fly. So we're going to consider to try to keep doing this, probably Drew and I, every Wednesday. We're going to try to approach it with different topics, and hopefully as the flow goes, things kind of do their own thing. If there's anything you think we should talk about, let us know. Wednesday at 8 is what we're shooting for. So I'm really hoping that next week I can get Rumble to work, because when it gets to the point where I want to say some stuff, at least I can open it up, racial slurs and such. So, you guys have a good night. Drew, thanks for coming on. I appreciate everybody that showed up and commented, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. See you guys next time.